Still, Hillary Clinton is winning in the popular vote. CNN Politics executive editor Mark Preston has been digesting the numbers for us this morning. He's here to show us more. Hi, Mark.
Hey, good morning, Carol. Well, this is where we began the night last night. As you can see right there, Hillary Clinton, we thought, had about 268 electoral votes going into the first poll closings at 6 o'clock. Donald Trump only 204, and as you said, he had a very, very, very narrow path to victory. So where did we end up? Well, he got right through that path, clearly. Right now he stands at 289 electoral votes. So how did he do that? Well, first of all, he won this battleground state right here, Florida. He won the battleground state of North Carolina. He won the battleground state of Ohio. And in addition to that, he put a fracture in the blue wall right up in here in Pennsylvania and then up here in Wisconsin. And as you can see right now, we are still waiting to see what happens here and what happens here in Minnesota and in Michigan. No, Carol, at this point, they're still counting votes. We're trying to figure out who will win those states. But you know what? As you talk about the popular vote, let's see where we stand right now. If you see that right there, Hillary Clinton has a little bit of a lead right now, but she could increase it because right now, if you look at the state of California, they only have about 2/3 of their vote actually counted at this point. So you would expect her to pick up something here, probably not very much at all up in Minnesota. And then, of course, over in Michigan right now, they're still counting votes. They still got about 5% out that they are trying to figure out. And then the last state, of course, is up here in New Hampshire. Could she pick up any here? And they're just about done counting as well. So for Hillary Clinton, for her to increase her lead in the popular vote, it would have to be here, Carol, in the state of Florida, the very blue state of Florida, Carol.
Okay, so it is possible that Hillary Clinton could win the popular vote, but not the electoral vote.
Absolutely, no question about that. It's happened in the past, and this might be one of the elections, Carol.
All right, Mark Preston, thanks to you. Global stocks, well, they're plummeting around the world on news of a Trump win, and, you know, the opening bell on Wall Street, it dings in just about 20 minutes. The Dow futures tumbling right now on the news of this election outcome. CNN business correspondent Alison Kosik has more. Good morning.
Good morning, Carol. So we are watching futures dip quite a bit. We are expecting the Dow to fall about 200 points when the opening bell rings in less than 30 minutes. But believe it or not, that's an improvement from what we saw overnight when we saw futures drop as much as 800 points on the Dow. That's as those returns were coming in about President-elect Trump gaining ground. So clearly there is a recovery that we can expect, but not at the opening bell. So why are investors spooked? Well, first of all, it came as a shock that that Trump won this election, and secondly, investors are spooked by the unpredictability factor of Donald Trump and his anti-trade policies that he's already talked about on the campaign trail. There is a lot of concern as to how those will affect the U.S. economy, how those will affect the broader economy. But as far as investors go, as today begins, the way investors are thinking is Trump at this point upended the landscape where there's just a lot of question marks going forward. One analyst saying expect a lot more monster swings between today and Inauguration Day as we wait to hear more from Trump as to where he stands on policies. But I want to leave you with one thought, that it doesn't matter who would have won the election. History shows us that there often is a sell-off the day after a presidential election. In fact, when President Obama won the election in 2008, we did see the S&P 500 fall 5% the next day. Carol?
All right, Alison Kosik reporting live for us. We'll check back with you when the opening bell rings at about 9:30 Eastern time. So we have a lot to discuss this morning, right? Maeve Reston is here. CNN national political reporter David Chalian joins me. He's our CNN political director. David Gergen is here, former presidential advisor to Nixon, Ford, Reagan, and Clinton. And Ryan Lizza is here. He's a Washington correspondent for The New Yorker. Welcome to all of you. I want to talk about the popular vote first off, David Chalian. So Hillary Clinton, it's possible she could win the popular vote, but not the electoral vote. But that doesn't matter. She's already conceded there will be no challenges.
Right. Well, that's how we elect presidents, is by the Electoral College, not by the popular vote. That's the way we've been doing it for a couple centuries. So and this will be, I think, the
it does speak to a certain part of his alt-right base the Bannon. I mean, Bannon, who's head of Breitbart, is his chairman. They traffic in that. Trump has retweeted a lot of that sort of thing, and I think that it's an appeal to some of the worst elements in our country as a closing argument. And I think that people who aren't sensitive to that or don't know that history may not see that in that, but that's what I immediately saw.
I want to ask you about this news broken by Reuters that the Clinton Foundation confirmed that it did accept a $1 million gift from Qatar while Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State without informing the State Department, even though they had made that as an assertion of rules that they would inform the State Department. Do you think going forward, if Hillary Clinton wins on Tuesday, does the Clinton Foundation need to be shut down, completely shut down, so as to eliminate any possible conflicts of interest or appearances of influence peddling?
Well, I don't know. I mean, Qatar, we have a base in Qatar. People should remember that. I mean, I've been on a number of USO tours before I became senator to Iraq and Afghanistan, and I know that Qatar is very important in our presence in the region. The Clinton Foundation has saved millions of lives. I think that sometimes people should compare the two foundations, the Trump Foundation and the Clinton Foundation, which got the HIV drugs to millions of people, versus the Trump Foundation, which doesn't seem to have done much of anything for anybody.
I hear you, sir, but is it not? I mean, the idea that there is this foundation that is the Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton Foundation out there raising tens of millions of dollars while she is potentially president of the United States, doesn't that create a possible real problem for her that's not worth undermining her presidency? There are questions about when individuals, groups, countries, corporations give money.
No, I take your point, and maybe there's some way to continue the good work that the foundation does and do it under a completely different, different people running it, so that there is no conflict of interest. I think that needs clearly to be looked at, and I'm sure that I can't see them not responding to that critique and finding a way to completely divorce that from her. That's a good idea, I think.
Hillary Clinton was asked this week about FBI Director James Comey and whether she, if she wins, would ask him to resign. Take a listen.
I'm not going to, get ahead of myself by assuming I'll be fortunate enough to be elected. I also would never comment on any kind of, personnel issue.
As a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, do you have an opinion as to whether or not you have confidence in the prospect of FBI Director Comey moving forward, overseeing the email investigation and any possible inquiries into the Clinton Foundation?
I think what's troubling, we've heard out of the FBI, I think it was troubling that he put that vague letter out 11 days before the election. I think even more troubling is what we've heard from sort of the rogue elements within the FBI, seemingly tipping off former Mayor Giuliani that something was up. And also, I mean, they just seem like that's not the FBI. That's not what the FBI is supposed to do. It seems so. I'm on the Judiciary Committee. I'm sure we will have hearings. I'm sure that FBI Director Comey will be before us, and I think he should answer questions about this, and he should be able to control the FBI. He's director of the FBI. He should be able to. What's been happening there has been a little hinky, I think.
But as you know,
so
FBI
we'll be asking
directors.
Questions.
Yeah, FBI directors are basically appointed for 10-year terms. He's served 3.
Right.
Do you have confidence that he can continue in that job for the next 7 years if Hillary Clinton wins?
I think we're going to have hearings. I think we're going to try to get to the bottom of this sort of rogue element within the FBI that seems to think it's okay to go outside the FBI to be trying to affect the election. That seems to be responding to just scurrilous right-wing books and starting investigations based on that kind of that kind of propaganda that we've seen before. That's disturbing, and if you're director of the FBI, you should be able to prevent that from happening. That's part of being leading an organization, is to keep that organization on its mission, and this is so apart and separate from anything they've ever done before that they're very, very important questions to be asking Director Comey.
So you're calling for hearings to talk.
4th time in history, if indeed it emerges that way, that the popular vote winner and the Electoral College vote winner are different. It was rather recent history. This happened in 2000.
Yeah, but we all know what happened then, right? But that's different from...
Tell me what happened then. He won the popular vote and George Bush won the Electoral College.
Right.
So, and George Bush served as president. So I think...
But we had to wait a while for that to happen.
Right, there was a 36-day recount. But I think, Carol, that while that may be an interesting data point, obviously Hillary Clinton quickly realized last night that it wasn't something that was going to prevent her from beginning the work of trying to heal the country. That's why she placed that concession phone call to Donald Trump, so that when he went out to address his supporters, he could reference that phone call, said that it happened, even though she had chosen not to speak last night.
Yeah, so is it strange, David Gergen, that Hillary Clinton chose not to speak last night and won't speak until later this morning?
Well, I think it caused some comment, but I think it's fairly trivial, actually. I think it would have been better had she come out last night. She could have done the same thing John Podesta did, and that is come in, give a brief statement. Listen, you've all been waiting here a long time. I'm sorry to have kept you. Votes are still being counted. Let's talk again in the morning. I think that would have been a better way to do it. But yeah, I think she should get some slack on this. You know, I'm sure it was a devastating blow to her to start with. It was also extremely late at night, and this morning's going to be fine.
So I want to pose this question to you because you've been around a long time, you served under 4 presidents. Put this election into context for us. How historic this really is for our country.
Well, I think there are 2 things about it that make it, that really give us pause this morning. The first, of course, was just the fact that there was an upset that so few saw coming. I think just a handful. The polls were wrong, the media was wrong, the general sense of the country was wrong, and I don't think we've seen an upset like this since Harry Truman, and he was a sitting president, and it was much easier to command the bully pulpit in those days for a president. But beyond that, the really important question is the country taking a turn? Are we moving toward becoming a different kind of country, or a different kind of sense of who we are? And I think a lot of Americans woke up this morning thinking, I don't recognize the country that I'm in. This is not the country I thought I grew up in. These are not the values I thought. There's going to be jubilation on one side, but as you know, among people who thought Hillary was going to win, not that they loved Hillary, but it gave people a sense of stability about what kind of country they had. And there are a lot of women today, and there are a lot of minorities today who feel like that he fanned the flames of racism and sexism, and they're very, very upset about that, and they feel very threatened and marginalized.
Right, because as we all know, Ryan, it's hard to take words back. I mean, you can't forget everything that Donald Trump has said in the run-up to that historic day yesterday, right? So how does he calm the fears of those minorities that are frankly scared this morning?
That's right. If you are an undocumented immigrant in this country, Donald Trump has promised to deport you, even if you were a child who was brought here by a parent. If you are thinking about coming to this country as a Muslim, Donald Trump has said that he's not going to allow you in the country. And I think the popular vote does matter. I think that it matters that that one of the candidates is likely to get more votes than the other. That matters for the mandate that President-elect Trump will claim. And I think it's really important to note that Donald Trump is going to be a very powerful president. The executive branch of the government over the last 16 years has increased its powers exponentially. After 9/11, George W. Bush erected a national security state beyond which any president had. Barack Obama only did small things to rein that in. As Obama's legislative agenda ground to a halt in the last 8 years, the executive branch, with executive orders and other uses, the pin that Barack Obama used, the White House expanded its authority. None of that has been read in a Republican House, and he's going to have a 5-4 majority on the Supreme Court soon when he appoints his first Supreme Court. So I think it's important to note that we have a candidate who is the foreign leader that he admires the most is Vladimir Putin. This is someone who's talked about his admiration for the Chinese crack down in Tiananmen Square, someone who was talked about punishing his enemies, and he's going to inherit the most powerful White House.
Two very different people. And preserving the republic, his aim. Omarosa, one of his top surrogates, said last night that Donald Trump has an enemies list. And this is what she said in an interview from last night. Quote, "It's so great our enemies are making themselves clear so that when we get into the White House, we know where we stand." Lindsey Graham, because he didn't vote for Mr. Trump. If Lindsey Graham felt his interest was with that candidate, God bless him. But let me just tell you, Mr. Trump has a long memory, and we're keeping a list. So
there right? Those are fighting words. And I think what will be so interesting to watch here is we know from the campaign trail that Donald Trump has a long memory and an enemies list, and from his history, does he now, as he steps into this different role, does he take on a different kind of persona? Does he put some of these, personal grievances behind him? I think there's a lot of, because of what Ryan was saying, there's a lot of pressure on him now with a Republican House, with a Republican Senate, to really get things done and unite a very fractured country. He is not the right messenger for that, but we did hear a slightly different tone from him last night. Certainly, was maybe the beginning of a different.
Director Comey, about these what you call rogue elements in the FBI.
Yeah, I think that there should be hearings, and I'm certain there will be hearings in the Judiciary Committee on this matter.
Let me ask you about the election going forward. There are signs that Latino early voting is up significantly, but that African American early voting, especially in several key states like North Carolina, is down. Are you concerned about what this might mean for Hillary Clinton on Tuesday?
Well, on the African American vote in North Carolina, I think that we've seen in the last week there has been an effort to suppress that vote, and I think African American North Carolinians have gotten that message, and the reaction to that usually is increased turnout. So I think that their effort to suppress people, to purge the rolls. Remember, the president told about this 100-year-old woman who was purged and wrote him a letter, and that went to a judge who called this insane, what was going on. I think that's going to actually spur African Americans in North Carolina to turn out.
Senator Al Franken of the great state of Minnesota, we appreciate your time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jake. Always good to talk to you.
Nice talking to you, sir. Donald Trump is keeping up a relentless schedule, hitting several time zones a day to maximize his remaining hours, but he faced a frightening moment in Reno, Nevada last night as Secret Service rushed Trump off the stage and security forces stormed the audience after panic in the crowd. Now, what we've learned is what apparently happened is a protester tried to raise a Republicans Against Trump sign. That protester was confronted by people in the crowd, tackled, and someone in the crowd apparently incorrectly yelled that the protester had a gun. The U.S. Secret Service says that no weapon was found. They report that no one was hurt. Mr. Trump returned to the stage not long after and resumed his campaign pitch. Joining me now from New York is Trump campaign manager Kellyanne Conway. Kellyanne, good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Jake. Hi.
So first of all, we're glad everyone's okay. I have to ask, your social media director, Dan Scavino, and a member of Mr. Trump's family, they're retweeting misinformation that this was an assassination attempt. It was not an assassination attempt. Thankfully, should they be spreading this misinformation?
Well, I'm glad you're happy that everybody's okay. That's really the main focus here. It's scary. I mean, all the coverage is usually about our protesters wreaking havoc and making people feel afraid, and this certainly goes both ways. I'm with Mr. Trump and the Secret Service routinely. They do an amazing job. They are absolutely the unsung heroes, I'm sure, for Mrs. Clinton as well, and the Secret Service. We really respect those men and women enormously, and I'm glad nobody was hurt, but it does remind you that in these closing days, especially as the polls tighten, many of us are getting more death threats, getting more angry messages on social media and elsewhere, and it's a pretty fraught environment there. I think that's the real focus here. I also just want to point out, because some people are spreading misinformation about the protester, he had canvassed for Hillary Clinton and he had donated to her campaign. So this is a Democratic plant or operative trying to disrupt our rally, and I think that people saw a nimble, resilient Donald Trump, who would be nimble and resilient as president as well, take back to the stage Dan Scavino telling people, we're not going to be stopped, nobody can interrupt this movement. But, if you're Don Jr. and you're on a live TV set while you're watching this unfold, it's pretty rattling to think of what may have happened to your father. So I'll excuse him now.
Except it wasn't an assassination attempt. It was apparently a local voter, a Republican, who says he is supporting Hillary Clinton. He has given money to Hillary Clinton. He has canvassed for Hillary Clinton, but he says he's a Republican. But most importantly, he was not trying to assassinate anyone. Here's what I'm talking about. Let's put it up. Donald Trump Jr. and Dan Scavino retweeted this, quote, Hillary ran away from rain today. Trump is back on stage minutes after assassination attempt. Again, we're very happy that this was not an assassination attempt, but why is your campaign spreading that it was?
Well, how do you, first of all, that's really remarkable, I have to say, that that's what the storyline is here. I thank you for reminding everybody that the rain chased her away. There weren't a lot of people there at her rally to begin with, and the rain just let them running for cover. I think she's got to sort of travel nonstop with Beyonce, Jay-Z, and the likes of that just to prop her up and get a decent crowd. People, by the way, are there to see Beyonce, not to see her. Jake, I want to say, are CNN going to retract all the storylines, all the headlines, all the breathless predictions of the last 2 weeks that it turned out not to be true? The race is over. The path is closed. It's going to be a blowout. You guys retract that, and I'll give a call to Dan Scavino about the retweet.
I never reported anything along those lines. I've always been saying that this was going to be a tight election, and even when Hillary... Who hasn't?
CNN certainly has. CNN certainly has. I love CNN, but you got to be honest here. The lower third, what's always on the chyrons, the panelists, the so-called experts, constantly saying she can't lose, the race is over, the path is narrowed. And you know what? I actually thank you guys in part for that.
I've never heard anybody say the race is over. We've been saying all along that Donald Trump has a path to the presidency, and you can say wow all you want. I've never said that the race was over. We can replay it as many tapes as you want. Let's move on. I want to play something that was said on Sunday at that same rally by the chairman of the Nevada Republican Party, Michael McDonald, and by your candidate, Donald Trump. Take a listen.
Last night in Clark County, they kept a poll open till 10 o'clock at night so a certain group could vote. It wasn't in an area that normally has high transition. The polls are supposed to close at 7. This was kept open till 10.
It's being reported that certain key Democratic polling locations in Clark County were kept open for hours and hours beyond closing time to bus and bring Democratic voters in. Folks, it's a rigged system.
Kellyanne, a spokesperson for Clark County, Nevada, said that folks who were in line before the polls closed were allowed to stay in line and vote. I'm sure you know that that's a common practice throughout the country. If a whole bunch of Trump voters are in line when the polls close in Ohio, should they not be allowed to vote, or would you want the polls closed only after every single one of them in line at the closing time was allowed to vote?
We just always want the law followed and the rules followed, and I do predict that you're going to see really long lines, serpentine-like lines on Tuesday of folks there for Donald Trump. You're going to see record turnout in many of these places. But look, it's concerning when you hear reports about special favors and perhaps special rules for Democratic voters. We already know that their presidential nominee has special rules for her.
What's this? I don't
saying
understand.
that we got reports of that.
If people are in line when the polls close, the people who are in line at that cutoff time are traditionally, and in some places by law, allowed to vote. You want that to happen on Tuesday with Trump voters. That's what Clark County was reportedly doing with other voters. So I don't understand the discrepancy.
We've not been able to independently verify that, but I'm telling you that we just want the rules and the law followed, and that'll be fine. But excuse us that the Democratic presidential nominee is somebody who lives under a separate set of rules than the rest of us. That's very clear. She gets to set up private email servers and lie about it and flout the law and compromise your kids and my kids' national security. Well, but that's what the voters are focused on too. We have a report this morning that she has her maid, one of her housekeepers, printing out classified information. Who is this person who is so selfish and so peevish?
I don't know what report you're but my question is, if voters are in line at a cutoff time and the county says you're in line at 7 o'clock, therefore we're going to wait until everybody in line at this cutoff point can vote, what's the problem?
If that is true, there isn't a problem. But we don't know that that's true, and we'll all take a look at Tuesday as well. But yes, we just want the rules and the law followed. But remember, the Democratic Party chose
Trump
to
said
clear
it was
the
rigged.
Field, and he's been saying that the system is rigged for a long time, and apparently
no, but he was talking
agree.
specifically about you don't have the information. Mr. Trump is saying that the system is rigged with these voters who are American citizens voting, and I'm just trying to figure out why that's a problem, why that's an example of anything being rigged. People are allowed to exercise the right to vote as long as they're in time at the cutoff point.
Right, Jake, on that we agree. Now, we've now said it 4 times because I'm sure it's a better storyline to discuss than the tightening polls and the fact that we're playing follow the leader and Hillary Clinton is following us to Michigan, following us to Pennsylvania, following us to Wisconsin, following us to New Hampshire, all these blue states on her schedule now for an arrogant campaign that's booked fireworks in New York to celebrate her victory on Tuesday night. She's got the President of the United States running around to blue states that he carried twice just to prop her up. That's actually the big story this morning. But if we want to say for the 4th time and agree together for the 4th time that if, big conditional word, if the law is being followed and people are in line, they ought to be able to vote. Donald Trump's been talking about a rigged system all along. His poll numbers started to tighten right after that 3rd debate. And part of it was him talking about a rigged, corrupt system where people just can't get a break. He's the voice for the forgotten man, forgotten woman. And since then, we've seen the polls continue to tighten to the point where we're deploying our 2 best assets, Mr. Trump and Governor Pence, in traditionally blue states that Barack Obama carried twice with well more than 50% of the vote, a number Hillary Clinton hasn't seen all along. Why is this woman who starts out with 248 electoral votes unable to find 22 more? I mean, it's absolutely confounding. She just can't find the extra 22.
It's a very competitive race. Very competitive race, and we've been covering the fact that we've been covering it that way, and we led the show with a senator from Minnesota to talk about the fact that Mr. Trump is going into Minnesota today.
He sounded very worried, by the way.
He said he was worried. Your campaign's created a final 2-minute closing ad. I want you to take a listen to part of it.
Our movement is about replacing a failed and corrupt political establishment with a new government controlled by you, the American people. The establishment has trillions of dollars at stake in this election.
It's a populist message. It takes on Wall Street. Can you tell me one policy that Donald Trump would enact that Goldman Sachs will not like?
They probably would not like the fact that he is going to renegotiate trade deals and bring jobs back from China and Mexico, make Americans keep American jobs here. I can't imagine that, that a lot of people on Wall Street appreciate that. They seem to like the way the policies have been going more recently.
Why would Goldman Sachs why would they be against trade deals that benefit the American worker?
Well, they don't necessarily benefit Goldman Sachs, but I think more to the point, when you go back and look at TARP, which we got from a Republican president, and it was continued by a Democratic president, Donald Trump would not be for that. And that benefits all these big banks who didn't need the help. In some cases, were forced to take the money because the government
that was
told them to.
2007, 2008 legislation. That was legislation from 8 years ago. But
right. Well, you guys
Trump's
always want to talk about the Iraq War, which was 5 years before that.
Right.
Look, he's trying to stimulate energy investment. Does Goldman Sachs agree? And Goldman Sachs is a big place, so let's not, make this an overwrought question and answer. But does Goldman Sachs want the kind of energy independence that Donald Trump wants, so that we stop relying upon foreign sources of oil and we start unleashing the energy that's off of our shores and under our feet right here in the U.S., spur economic growth within our communities, do the hydraulic fracturing that's unleashing the natural gas that we have right here? Are they? So there are many different. Well, there you go. Well, there's an answer. In other words, let's ask them. But the fact is, Hillary Clinton is a tool of the big banks that gave her. And I'll tell you one more thing he wouldn't do. But one more thing he wouldn't do. He wouldn't take gazillions of dollars in speaking fees from big banks and then pretend that somehow he's going to regulate them or somehow he's going to be for the people. I mean, if Hillary Clinton were a legitimately
we have no idea what he's taken in speaking
against
fees.
Wall Street.
Donald Trump has given speeches for money. He has given speeches for money, but we have no idea how much money because he refuses to release his tax returns.
Well, Hillary Clinton, as CNN has reported, Hillary Clinton has made tens of millions of dollars on speeches, and she gives them for free now, and nobody seems to want to show up and listen to them. So, I mean, her crowds look like
we know that she's given.
Like
we know that she's made that money because she's released her tax returns. We know that she's made that money because she's released her tax returns.
No, we know she's made that money because the Clintons are all about money, and we just got confirmation that $1 million gift from Qatar for Bill Clinton's birthday. Look, Americans look at that and they say, last time I celebrated my husband's birthday, no foreign government gave us $1 million. Nobody said in emails, we want to make sure that Bill Clinton Inc. makes about $66 million. That's a lot of money. $28 million from Morocco. I mean, this is just not normal. And by the way, Americans, it's not necessary. You don't have to start the next 4 years under a cloud of corruption and unanswered questions by grifting and gifting among people who always put themselves first. I mean, if that weren't true,
there's a lot of unanswered questions about. There's a lot of unanswered questions about Donald Trump because he doesn't release his tax returns. He has given speeches for money. We're told that we have no idea what they are because he won't be transparent with the American people about where his money is or where he's taking money from.
He's very transparent. Here's what Americans should look at when they see. Here's what they should see when they look at Donald Trump: 104-page financial disclosure form. Everybody can pull it up right now.
The first major party candidate to not release tax returns since 1976.
Well, he's the first major party candidate to truly be outside of politics, and that's what people see. He's built a movement. Everywhere he shows, he's like 5 stops yesterday. Everywhere he shows, there's just thousands and thousands of people there in these so-called blue states. But we're supposed to